I worked overtime for months, staying hungry and tired, just to save money for a ring to propose to the girl I loved, but before I could place it on her finger, she left me for someone wealthier. My name is Jake, and I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. This isn't a story about resent, about second chances. This is about how I turned 6 months of sacrifice into a lifetime of regret with one selfish choice. It started with overtime, always overtime. Sarah and I had been together for 3 years, and I knew she was the one. I'd known since our second date when she laughed so hard at my terrible joke about penguins that she snorted, then turned bright red and covered her face. That moment right there, I knew I wanted to spend forever making her laugh like that. The ring cost $8,000. I know, that's not much by some standards, but for a guy making $45K a year as a warehouse supervisor, it might as well have been 80 grand. I could have gone cheaper, but Sarah deserved something that would catch the light the same way her eyes did when she was happy. So I picked every extra shift I could, weekends, holidays, late nights. While other couples were going to movies or grabbing dinner, I was stacking boxes and counting inventory. 60 hours a week became 70, 70 became 80. My back ached constantly, my hands were always dry and cracked from the warehouse air. I lived on gas station coffee and vending machine sandwiches because every dollar I didn't spend on food was a dollar closer to that ring. Sarah noticed, of course she did. She'd text me during my breaks asking when I'd be home. I'd lie and say soon, then stay another 3 hours. She'd suggest we go out for a nice dinner, and I'd make excuses about being tired or broke. I watched the confusion creep into her eyes, the way she'd look at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. "Air okay?" she'd ask, touching my arm across our tiny kitchen table. "Distant lately." And I'd smile and tell her I was fine, that work was just busy, that things would calm down soon. Meanwhile I was counting every penny in my head, calculating how many more weeks until I could afford the ring, the perfect romantic dinner, the whole proposal she deserved. The irony is crushing now. I was working so hard to prove my love that I forgot to actually show it. Month 4 of my overtime marathon, Sarah started going out more with her girlfriends. I told it was good that she was having fun while I couldn't. I told she'd understand once she saw that ring, once she realized what all this sacrifice was for. Month 5 she met him. His name was Marcus, investment banker. Drove a BMW that probably cost more than I made in 2 years. He'd show at the bar where Sarah and her friends hung out, buying rounds of expensive drinks like it was nothing. Sarah mentioned him casually at first. "This guy Marcus bought our table shots tonight." Then more often. Then she started dressing nicer when she went out. I should have seen it coming. I should have stopped working those extra shifts and paid attention to what was happening right in front of me. But I was so close to having enough for the ring. Just 6 more weeks of overtime and I could propose. 6 weeks turned into 0 when I came home early from work one Tuesday afternoon. My supervisor had sent me home with a stomach bug, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed with Sarah and maybe finally tell her about the ring, about the surprise I'd been planning. I found them on our couch. My couch. The one we'd picked out together at a second-hand store. The one where we'd watched 100 movies and fallen asleep tangled together on countless Sunday afternoons. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, just talking, but the way she was looking at him. God, I hadn't seen her look at me like that in months. Like he was interesting, like he mattered, like she was excited to be talking to him. "Jake," she jumped, smoothing her hair. "We're home early." "Marcus, this is Jake, my boyfriend." "Jake, this is Marcus." Marcus stood, all 6'2" of him in his expensive suit, and shook my hand with the confidence of someone who'd never worked an overtime shift in his. "Good to meet, man." Sarah's told me so much about, had she? Because lately it felt like we barely talked about anything except my work schedule and how tired I was. After Marcus left, Sarah and I had our first real in 3 years. I accused her of cheating, she accused me of neglecting her. We were both right and both wrong, and by the end of it we were both crying. "I feel like I don't even know anymore," she sobbed. "Or never here, and when are exhausted and distant. I don't know what happened to us." Jake. I almost told her about the ring then. Almost explained everything. But I wanted the proposal to be perfect, and it in our living room with both of us tear-stained and angry wasn't perfect. So I kept my mouth shut, and that silence cost me everything. 2 weeks later, I finally had enough money saved. The ring was sitting in a little black box in my sock drawer, waiting for the perfect moment. I'd planned a whole elaborate proposal dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date, then a walk through the park where we'd first said, "I love." I came home from my last overtime shift exhausted but excited. Tomorrow was Saturday. Tomorrow I was going to ask the love of my to marry me. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table with a suitcase beside her. "We need to talk," she said, and I knew before she said another word that I was too late. "I can't do this anymore, Jake. I can't pretend we're okay when we're not. I can't pretend I haven't developed feelings for someone else." The words hit me like a physical. I actually staggered backward. "Marcus," I whispered. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant for it to happen. But he's present, Jake. He listens when I talk, he makes time for me, he makes me feel like I matter. Matter to me more than anything," I said, my voice cracking. "Everything I've been doing, all the overtime, it was all for us." "How was I supposed to know that?" she asked. "Never talk to me anymore, or never here. And when are here, act like spending time with me is a chore." I wanted to run to the bedroom, grab that ring, show her proof of how much I loved her. But looking at her face, at the sadness and exhaustion and relief in her eyes, I knew it wouldn't matter. A ring couldn't fix 6 months of neglect. A proposal couldn't undo all the times I'd chosen work over her, chosen my plan over our present. She left that night, and I sat alone in my apartment now, holding a ring that would never find its home. 6 months of sacrifice. 6 months of overtime and hunger and exhaustion. 6 months of saving every penny and working until my hands bled. Also I could give her the proposal she deserved, and in those 6 months of planning our future, I forgot to live our present. Now Marcus gives her everything I worked overtime to afford, and he does it without breaking a sweat. He takes her to expensive restaurants while I'm eating ramen in my empty apartment. He buys her jewelry while I stare at a ring that mocks me from my nightstand. The worst part, she's happy. I see her posts on social media and she's glowing. She looks like the Sarah I fell in love with, the one who used to laugh until she snorted. Except now she's laughing for someone else. Tomorrow makes 2 months since she left. The ring is still in that little black box and I still sleep alone in a bed that feels too big and too cold. I thought I was proving my love by working too. Instead I proved that I did understand what love actually means. Love isn't a ring. Love isn't a perfect proposal. Love isn't a grand gesture that comes after months of neglect. Love is showing, love is being present, love is choosing person every single day, not just when finally have enough money to make it official. I learned that lesson 6 months too late, and now I get to live with that knowledge for the rest of my 3 months after Sarah left. I did something that still makes me sick to think about. I'm telling this because someone needs to hear how badly a person can mess when they're drowning in their own mistakes. Her name was Jessica. Brunette, worked at the coffee shop near my warehouse. She'd started giving me free extra shots in my morning coffee, smiling a little too long when she handed me my change. Under normal circumstances I would have been polite but clear that I wasn't available. But these weren't normal circumstances. I was broken, angry, and enough to think that maybe if I could prove to that other women found me attractive, it would somehow less that Sarah didn't want me anymore. Jessica asked me out on a Thursday. I said yes on Friday. We went to dinner Saturday night, and I spent the entire time comparing her to Sarah. Jessica laughed at my jokes, but it wasn't Sarah's snorting laugh. She touched my arm when she talked, but her hands weren't Sarah's hands. She was pretty and kind and interested in me, and I felt absolutely nothing except a hollow ache where my heart used to be. I should have ended it that night, should have thanked her for a nice evening and been honest that I wasn't ready to date anyone. Instead, I kept seeing her as being with someone, anyone, felt better than being alone with my regrets. For 6 weeks I used Jessica as a bandage for a wound that needed stitches. I let her think we were building something while I was really just hiding from the wreckage of what I'd lost. She'd text me good morning every day. She'd bring me homemade lunch to work. She even helped me repaint my living room because she said it looked too sad. The worst part, she was falling for me. I could see it in the way she looked at me, the way she'd pause before saying goodbye like she wanted to say something else. Something that started with I, and ended with, meanwhile, I was still checking Sarah's social media like a masochist. Marcus had taken her to Paris for a long weekend. Paris, I'd been planning to propose at the local park, and this guy whisked her off to France like it was nothing. The photos killed me. Sarah in front of the Eiffel Tower grinning like she'd won the lottery. Sarah and Marcus at some fancy restaurant, her wearing a dress I'd never seen before, looking elegant and sophisticated and happy. Sarah kissing Marcus in front of Notre Dame, and the way she was looking at him, that used to be my look, that used to be mine. I drank too much that night. Way too much. Jessica came over cause I'd sent her some pathetic texts about feeling lonely, and she found me on my kitchen floor, crying over photos of my ex and clutching that ring box. Who is she? Jessica asked quietly, sitting down next to me. And I told her everything. About Sarah, about the overtime, about the ring, about how I'd worked to trying to prove my love while forgetting to actually show it. I told her about Marcus and his BMW and his effortless wealth. I told her about the proposal that would never happen and the future I'd lost. Jessica sat there and listened to me confess that I was still completely in love with another woman, and when I finished, she just nodded and said I know. No. I've known for weeks, she said. The way say my name versus the way said hers just now. The way look at phone. The way always seem like her somewhere else when we're together. I felt like the worst person alive. Jessica, I'm so sorry. I never meant to. Yes did, she said, and there was no anger in her voice, just sadness. Maybe not consciously, but meant to use me as a distraction, meant to let me care about. Figured out how to stop caring about her. She was right, and we both knew it. The thing is, she continued, I thought maybe if I was patient enough, if I was kind enough, if I loved enough, eventually he'd see me instead of her ghost, but can't love someone into loving back can. The irony hit me like a truck. Here was Jessica, trying to love me into loving her back, the same way I tried to work my way into deserving Sarah's love. Both of us missing the point that love isn't something earn or prove or win. It's something give and receive freely, or not at all. Jessica left that night and I never saw her again. She quit the coffee shop the next week. I heard from a coworker that she'd started dating someone else within a month. Someone who looked at her the way I'd looked at Sarah. The way I'd never looked at her. I'd an innocent person because I was too broken to be honest about my own damage. I'd let her waste 6 weeks of her on someone who was emotionally unavailable, and for what? So I could feel slightly less pathetic for a few hours at a time. That's when the real shame set in. Not just the shame of losing Sarah, but the shame of what I'd become after losing her. A person who used other people's feelings as medicine for his own pain. A person who was so focused on his own heartbreak that he forgot other people had hearts that could break too. I started seeing a therapist after that. Dr. Martinez, a woman in her 50s who didn't let me get away with anything. In our first session, I spent 45 minutes explaining why Sarah left me, how Marcus had more money, how unfair it all was. Tell me about the overtime, she said. What about it? Worked 80 hours a week for 6 months to save for a ring. That's admirable. Thank Pa. But didn't ask Sarah what she wanted. I stared at her. What do you mean? Did ever ask her if she wanted to get married? Did ask what kind of ring she liked? Did ask if she'd rather have time and attention than an expensive proposal? The questions hit me like physical blows because I knew the answers. No, no, and no. Spent 6 months planning a surprise for someone without considering what would actually make them happy. Dr. Martinez continued. That's not love, Jake. That's control disguised as romance. I wanted to argue to explain that everything I'd done was out of love. But the words died in my throat because somewhere deep down, I knew she was right. Real love is collaborative. She said. It's checking in with partner, asking what they need, being present for their daily instead of just planning grand gestures for their future. Treated Sarah like a prize to be won instead of a person to be loved. Over the following weeks, Dr. Martinez helped me see the truth I'd been avoiding. I hadn't lost Sarah because Marcus had more money. I'd lost her because I'd stopped treating her like a partner and started treating her like a goal. The overtime wasn't really about the ring. It was about my need to be the hero of my own story. The guy who sacrificed everything for love. I'd been so invested in the narrative of Jake the devoted boyfriend that I'd forgotten to actually be a devoted boyfriend. Meanwhile, Marcus hadn't stolen Sarah from me. He'd simply been present for her when I wasn't. He'd listened when she talked, made her laugh, treated her like someone worth spending time with. He hadn't won her with his money, he'd won her with his attention. 5 months after Sarah left, I finally worked the courage to return the ring. The jeweler was kind about it, but I only got back 60% of what I'd paid. The rest was lost to the restocking fee and the depreciation that happens the moment walk out of the store with jewelry. I stared at that check, worth almost $5,000, and realized it represented something I'd never get back. Not just the money, but the time. The months of Sarah's when she needed me to be present. When she was trying to tell me through her loneliness and confusion that our relationship was dying. I'd been so busy earning the right to propose that I'd forgotten to earn the right to stay. That night, I wrote Sarah a letter, not to win her back, not to make excuses but to apologize. To acknowledge that I'd failed her long before Marcus came into the picture. I told her about the ring, about the overtime, about how I'd convinced that working to was the same thing as loving her. I never sent it. Instead, I kept it as a reminder of the person I never wanted to be again. The person who confused planning with loving, who thought grand gestures could replace daily kindness, who was so focused on the future that he destroyed the present. 6 months after Sarah left, I saw her one more time. She was at the grocery store with Marcus, and they were arguing about what kind of pasta to buy. A nothing argument, the kind couples have when they're comfortable enough to disagree about things. But here's what hit me: she looked happy even while annoyed. She looked like someone who felt safe enough with her partner to be cranky about pasta shapes. She looked like someone who was living her instead of waiting for it to begin. That's when I finally understood what I'd lost. Not just Sarah, but the version of that knew how to be present. The version that could argue about pasta and mean it, that could find joy in ordinary Tuesday evenings, that could love someone without trying to prove it. Marcus saw me first and whispered something to Sarah. She turned, met my eyes for just a moment, and gave me a small, sad smile before they walked away. No anger, no drama, just ease, sadness. For what we'd been and what we'd never be again. I stood there in the cereal aisles for 10 minutes after they left, crying into my shopping cart like a crazy person. That was 8 months ago. I still level on. I still work at the warehouse, though I stopped picking overtime unless I actually need the money. I still see Dr. Martinez every other week. I still think about Sarah every day, but it's different now. Less desperate, more grateful. Grateful that she was brave enough to leave when I wasn't brave enough to change. Grateful that she found someone who could give her what she needed. Grateful that my selfishness didn't trap her in a relationship with someone who had forgotten how to see her. But gratitude doesn't erase the guilt, and it doesn't fill the empty space where our future used to be.